you're bringing off the bench unless it's like pure attack because you're
I
down
feel-
3-0,
get
which
it.
he shifts
There's
stuff.
no limit. There's no limit. Like he could just be on ice on the bench, just like
Fair,
talking to the
that's
guys,
true.
soaking in a little bit of atmosphere. But that's a very small, like that doesn't matter. It is what it is. Unless we get to a point where two guys get injured, or let's say Yedlin and Cannon get roasted. Like I don't think that is something to get broken up about. What do you like first, and we'll get to maybe what we could be concerned about.
So I think for likes, first is the midfield, and this is the midfield that we got a peak of 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and every time they've been together, it's just been special to watch, and it feels like all three of them play off of each other. All three of them do different things well, and the insanity of their age is that they could be doing this for 10 years and just continue to get better and better. There was question marks around Musa. He came off the bench for Valencia this weekend, although he did do it at center mid and led, I think, one of the best comebacks in La Liga history. 2 goals after the 90th minute from central midfield. So I was hoping that this is what it would look like, but I think that's when you talk about being excited about this game and what it could be like. This is it, man. This is the future. If Yunus Musa and Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie can control this game, like that's the first line of what to see in every game for the U.S. going forward. If they can do it against Mexico in World Cup qualifying, then they can do it for the U.S. in any game that they play in for the next 10 to 15 years.
Here's what I like. I like that Walker Zimmerman is in this team. You know, we kind of assumed that was going to be the case, but I really like that. And I like that Weston McKennie is back and Miles Robinson is. When I look at like set pieces, if Ricardo Pepi, and I think I'm reading that the right way, if Ricardo Pepi is like your fourth option just to sort of like sniff around and find open spaces, because Walker's going to he's going to demand at least 2 guys. Weston, based on the recent history in this matchup, is going to demand that sort of attention. And then Miles Robinson, obviously, getting the winner in the Gold Cup as well and showing he's a threat. That's a place, and Cesar, feel free to jump in here, because I have to imagine there's some nightmares from that. And Tata has to have spent a good amount of time thinking about game planning set pieces, because I think that is, other than maybe like age and legs, that is by far, I think, the U.S.'s biggest advantage.
Most definitely. I think that's why, if you actually believe some of the reports right now, you do have Warrior Carlos Guerrero tweeting out the starting 11, and ESPN Mexico have also tweeted out the 11. That's why maybe in the center defense you have Johan Vasquez. It looks like it's going to be Cata Dominguez who are going to be getting the start here for Ultri. Yes, Cata Dominguez, he's the oldest defender of the call-up. Yes, he's arguably the slowest of the remaining center back options, but he wins aerial duels. He's aggressive. And we saw what happened in the Nations League final. We saw what happened in the Gold Cup final. And perhaps that's why, and it's looking like, once again, it's not official from L3 just yet, but it's what everybody's saying right now. Everybody's tweeting out the starting 11 and whatnot. It looks like that's what's going to happen. And it makes sense why you would have Cata and Johan Vasquez back there to help with some of these aerial duels. Because, yeah, those set pieces have really hurt Mexico so far this year.
And you mentioned it, Weeby, about what Weston McKennie's done against Mexico, but he's done it against everyone.
Yeah,
like, he is a global elite player in aerial positions and also in the run of play in terms of crashing on the far post, winning 50-50s. He did it for Juve in Champions League last week. He wins a 50-50 on the far post. That gets knocked down. Dybala gets the goal to put them ahead against, I don't know, pick your Ukrainian team. Jimmy Conrad's not here, so I don't remember which one. But yeah.
Karpati Lviv. Bam, bam, we got one. I don't know where they're from. I have a scarf. That's all.
I was like, I think it's Dynamo Kiev. So yeah, I think you're right that set pieces are huge. Set piece service is interesting with this group. Without Pulisic out there hasn't been anyone that's really established themselves. And Brendan Aronson has taken some, and it's not his best attribute. And you shouldn't have to overcomplicate it. Oh my God, I thought Panama was about to score. You shouldn't have to overcomplicate it with this group, as you said. Like, you have the advantages all across that group of 3 or 4 that you put in there, but it's something to look out for.
Who is it going to be? I guess I hadn't really considered it until I really looked at the lineup again. There isn't sort of an obvious, hey, Gio Reyna's in the team, hey, Christian's in the team, sort of set piece taker. Even when Sebastian Lletget was in there, it seemed like he took a ton of corners. But I don't see an obvious, like, that's going to be the guy from this group, other than maybe Brendan.
I think it'll be Aronson, and I think it'll be Musa. I think those will be the two that have the option if they want it. And then it's maybe they've worked on some stuff. But you also have to remember they've been together for 3 days now, right? Working on set pieces. So whichever side it's from, whatever area it's in, they're going to have different options that Greg Berhalter goes to. Josh Wisenhunt tweeted at us, and I agree with him. This was going to be the second thing I said about being excited. He brought up Timothy Weebs, which I think that was the biggest surprise in the starting lineup to me.
Really?
I wanted to see this.
He would go Areola?
100%. I thought he would go Paul Areola.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It felt like a toss-up to me. And for me, either or would be fine. I'm not one of those folks on Twitter that's just like throwing themselves off the proverbial cliff when they see Paul's name in the lineup. I actually think these are the sort of games that he's super, like effective in. And he's not going to be a quote-unquote brilliant player most of the time, but he is almost always going to be an effective player, especially because you heard the talk leading up to this game. And I don't know, Greg was saying a lot of things, whether it be that he doesn't think Mexico gives the respect to the U.S. or otherwise. But the thing I liked to hear was that it was going to be the press. It was going to be aggressive. They were going to try to go in and win as many duels as they could and put the pressure on Mexico and not let them just sort of build out of the back and relax. I think that's where, again, when you look at this lineup, it's like 8 players under 22 or under 24 or something like that. Like how many of those players does Mexico have in this lineup, Cesar? Like what is, I don't know if you know the average age here, but.
Well, what's fascinating, and I don't know if Cesar's working on it.
That's some quick math I'm going to have to do. I wouldn't be able to.
Give me a guess. Give me a rough estimate.
But
go ahead.
I was going to say, Cesar, what's fascinating about this Mexico group is it's a really young squad, and everyone that plays is old, right? Like there are 3 players in midfield that are over the age of 25, I think, but it's Guardado and Ache, who I assume are starting. I still haven't seen the lineup. Have you?
What's the fake real lineup? Cesar, guide us through it.
Well, at this
Tell
point,
us what we got.
at this point, you have through the end, you have Azteca, you have ESPN Mexico tweeting out the lineup, and it's all pretty consistent right now. So it looks like this is pretty much a guarantee, and it's pretty reliable sources. And as for age, I don't know. I recently turned 33, so I'm not entirely sure if all these guys are old just yet. But yes, but what you're looking at, like, let me go through the 11 really quickly that everybody is sending it right now. So you're going to have Ochoa in net. You're going to have Shaka Rodriguez at right back, Gallardo as a left back. The central defensive partnership, it's going to be Vasquez and Cata Dominguez. I already talked a little bit there about Cata and why he was included there. In the midfield, and this is probably the bigger surprise, not what's happening in defense, but what's happening in the midfield, it looks like it's be Edson Alvarez, but it doesn't look like Guardado is going to be in the 11. And you have Luis Romo taking his place, working alongside Hector Herrera right there. And then up top, you have the front 3 that we always expected, which was Chucky, Jimenez, Tecatito. So the big story here, I know we could talk about like the average age of this roster, which I guess if I was to take a guess, probably somewhere near 26, 27, 28, or perhaps closer to 28. Yeah. But the bigger story here is that Luis Romo is going to be getting the start over Guardado.
Do you think that's to cover defensively? Like him and Edson being in there?
Yeah, I think Romo is better overall defensively than Guardado. And I would say on paper, Guardado is better with his short passing. Obviously he has an immense amount of maturity. Guardado is able to carry the ball very well. But Guardado's energy, I mean, you've seen it. Mexico fans have definitely seen it. His energy has really fallen off a cliff in recent years. I mean, he's in his mid-30s now. He can go missing after a short amount of time. So I think that's why I thought that decided to bring in Romo here, not just for his defensive abilities, where he can work a little bit better alongside Edson to help for that defensive coverage, especially because you're going to be having Vasquez and Cata Dominguez back in the back line, and that hasn't been tried out just yet. At least I've never seen that before. But also because I do think he probably brings a little bit more stamina than Guardado, who, yes, is Mexico's captain, but I don't know. Like I said, his energy has really fallen off a cliff in recent years.
How much do you think Tata took from that Canada draw in Azteca? Like, is this sort of a direct result of both, obviously, the nation's league final, but I think also more recently, maybe sort of that realization of like, oh man, we can be sort of pressed physically, and we aren't always able to meet that level.
Yeah, and I think that's why maybe he decided to bring in Romo, why he decided to bring in Cata Dominguez too, who, yes, maybe it would be more exciting to have a Cordoba working alongside Ache as opposed to Guardado or as opposed to Romo, or maybe it'd be, I don't know, if you're trying to build a little bit more from the back or trying to be a little bit more. Let's say like not focus so much on a physical player, but having someone like an Angulo or Sepulveda working alongside Vasquez. It is interesting to note that he has brought in Romo, who is better defensively than Guardado, and bring in someone like Cata Dominguez, who is going to be lacking some pace. But, and I know, like I said, he's the oldest of these defenders from the call, but he's aggressive. He wins stuff in the air, and I think it makes sense.
What's the vibes like, Cesar, in Mexican media leading up to this? Like, how much are they putting on this? How much emphasis? What's sort of the expectation for this squad and this result and from Tata?
I mean, I think you could probably guess what the expectation is. Because, like, because from my perspective, the way that I'm seeing this is kind of more of a, I don't know, kind of like a wider perspective here, and thinking that Mexico's in a good spot. Win, lose, or draw, this is going to be the most difficult game in World Cup qualifying, and they'll be fine no matter what happens tonight. That said, when you look at what a lot of Mexican media is saying, I believe it was, I forget who was it said it, that they said that it would be unforgivable. I think the word that they used was unforgivable. It was like part of the headline if Mexico were to lose tonight. Good. Yeah. And there was another one, talking about like all about like revenge. So the exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the expectation here.
I mean, that's like the perfect headline word. Like, you can't come up with a better headline.
Yes, the expectation here is for them to go out and win. I mean, that, to be fair, I mean, Tata yesterday in the press conference, I mean, when they asked him if he's going to aim for the tie, he basically said, no, a tie won't be on their minds for Friday, and that they'll push for a win here. And I think that is the expectation from Mexican media, despite the fact that, like I said, I mean, yeah, I'm saying this is personally a Mexico fan, but I think they'll be fine regardless of the result. Yes, I want to see them get a good result, but I think they'll be fine nonetheless. But I know that's not the way that the newspaper is going to respond tomorrow morning.
What else is on your mind, Dave, in this lineup? Like, where do you see, what matchup do you like or are interested in? What off the bench for the U.S. do you think it could be useful? Like, how are you sort of digesting things as it stands?
I think you look at Weah and Aronson in this lineup, and you look at Chaka and Gallardo, and Gallardo's best attributes are going forward. They always have been. I think he's an elite attacker from the left back spot in the region, but that's where he often loses his head or focuses more. And we saw Tejan take advantage of him whenever he wanted to. And we saw Alistair Johnson be successful as well. So you look at, you assume it's Timothy Weah lined up across from him, and the way that Weah was able to use the runs of Dest either as a decoy or to connect with in the Costa Rica game. And if he can do something similar there today, I think he can be super dangerous. Weah, I've talked about it a lot. He's one of the best two-way wingers in the world. Like, he works so hard defensively, and he's so well drilled defensively. He's going to have to make decisions on when it's ready to leak out early and be able to hit Mexico on the counter and hit in transition when Gallardo's higher up the field. And Tyler Adams normally is the big help there, right? When Tyler can come over and help Yedlin defend and be that extra defender along the wing because he just covers an insane amount of ground, that should free up Weah to be a little bit higher up the field and be dangerous. And then we've seen him already with the U.S. Sometimes he'll come inside, link up with Pepi, attack goal himself. Sometimes he'll dip a shoulder and go back outside. And he's smart with the pullback or the cross across the face of goal. So I think that's a huge matchup in this game. And I think Brendan Aronson on the flip side against Chaka Rodriguez. Chaka's been around for 1,000 years. I still think he's a player that will struggle with Brendan Aronson's shiftiness. And it's not, like Messi with Aronson, where he takes you 1v1 straight up. It's normally weird, awkward moments where he gets it on the half turn, or you think the ball is loose and then he jumps on it because he's working pretty hard. And normally his first two movements are really quick there to get him out of trouble and attacking goal. And I think that's an area that the U.S. can take advantage of.
Most definitely, especially since whether it be Xhaka, whether it have been Jorge Sanchez, those two players like to push up. They like to, unfortunately, leave some open space behind them. I think Jorge Sanchez probably leaves a little bit more open space than Xhaka, and maybe that's why Tata decided to go with Xhaka as opposed to Jorge Sanchez, who I would say has more pace and is a little bit more quick going forward. But I think Shaka's a little bit more better with his positioning, but nonetheless, he is going to leave some space open, and it's just inevitable. I think whether it be Shaka or Jorge Sanchez, that Mexico's going to give a lot of space there, I guess, on the right-hand side for Mexico, but on the left-hand side for the U.S.
I'm super interested in the center backs, obviously, for Mexico, because it seems like there's so much change in that area of the field. Some of the familiar faces that we're just used to seeing there are not there, whether it be Nestor or would be Hector Moreno or whoever else. I want to see Ricardo Pepi's movement against those guys. I want to see if he can get them a little bit out of sorts, a little confused, if he can get across the front shoulder and get to the near post. Like if he can have that hard step and drop back. Like how does he find space in this game against two center backs? I mean, I cannot believe, Cesar, that they haven't played together, have they? I mean, Vasquez only has like 117 first team minutes for Mexico at this point. So they don't have much time together. Like, what's the perception of Ricardo Pepi coming into this match? Because we haven't really mentioned it. He has been the story for the U.S. with his goals, with his decision before that, obviously, with the sort of like, it's not unique. The dual national recruitment that is going on between these two countries and these two national teams. What is that story like for Mexico?
Does it count as recruitment if you never call him? That's true. He never even called Pepi, so I don't even think they were.
That isn't. Yeah, we want a recruiting war where there was no war. But hey, we're still happy about it. All right. What's that story like for this game?
Well, hopefully, it looks like Mexico won that Julian Araujo war, which is probably where they need a little bit more help back there when I'm talking about the space that Shaka.
I was glad they didn't call him. To be honest with you.
But yeah, but when you look at it's incredibly worrisome. I mean, I talked to you guys about it earlier this week that I was already worried when Moreno was fit, because my worry was just like, oh, well, Araujo, he's suspended after two recent yellows his last game. Montes, he suffered his injury. I was like, oof, well, who's going to start next to Moreno? I'm really worried about that. Then we received the news last night that Moreno would be doubtful due to injury. So
what happened?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't entirely know the details regarding this situation. Maybe it was something I missed, which is a little obvious. I'm not entirely sure, but he isn't available due to injury. And like I said, I think it's just you're left with a lot of worries about the heart of this back line for Mexico, because this is an untested setup. And yeah, people say like, oh, Cata, he's older. He has like a little bit more experience, but it isn't as if Cata is a kind of player who's been playing in every single window for El Tri. This is a guy with, I want to say he's 34, but it's got to be 19, 20. Yeah, I'm seeing here it's about 20 caps for El Tri. Yeah. You look at Johan Vasquez, 2 caps for El Tri. So this is definitely,
this would not be the first, second, or probably even third choice.
Yeah. So when you think about cohesion, there's going to be real, serious lack of cohesion here for El Tri in the back line.
Cesar, we've talked about this a little bit on our own, but we haven't actually talked to you about it at all. Someone mentioned this, and I think Doyle's brought it up as well, of, Ricardo Pepi could be probably the first Mexican-American star for the USMNT. We've had Latin American stars for the US, but never true Mexican-Americans. What do you make of like what Pepi could be as not just like a player, but sort of as a symbol or a celebrity or anything like that if he's able to be successful?
I mean, that's a very, very fascinating question. That's like, man, that's like 3 podcasts in itself, to be honest. Just because, I don't know, I guess I immediately just think of my own personal perspective. I feel like being a Mexican American, my parents were from Mexico, and I was raised here in the U.S. I felt like I was I was very Americanized, and I feel like I see myself as a very Americanized person. I mean, I drink craft beers and listen to NPR, for God's sake. But still, there's something kind of like innate and just kind of embedded in my mind that like you can't really root against something. That's just something that's always kind of been embedded in my mind. And I wonder if other people feel the same way. And I wonder if also, I don't know, if Pepi could be a difference maker, if he could truly be a game changer, not just saying on the field, but also off the field, where you have people who really have this incredibly strong connection to Mexican soccer, but maybe see someone like Pepi and think, well, maybe that could be me. Maybe that could be my opportunity here, especially since, I mean, I have to admit, as a Mexico fan, when you look at the U.S. men's national team, you do see a lot of really exciting young players, and that gets a lot of attention for young soccer fans. When you see, a kid at Chelsea, when you see a kid at Borussia Dortmund, and thinking like, oh, this is an exciting team. Maybe that's something I could do. Maybe that's someone that I could root for. And if Pepi does go brown and if he achieves pretty big things, then yeah, maybe I could see something down the line. Nonetheless, once Cesar Jr. or Cesarino Jr., I have no idea, comes down the line, they'll be given a green jersey at birth, that's for sure, and I'll definitely indoctrinate them in the same way that I was.
Man, if Pepi scores tonight, I can't even think what it'll be.
He
now
said he's going to celebrate, which I think is.
Yeah, I don't think that's ridiculous.
What's up. Yeah,
I
that's what's up.
I don't know. When I was listening to the interview, to be honest, I don't know how you guys felt, but I felt like, man, Pepe's like one or two questions away from saying "Vamos Mexico." I don't know. My opinion.
When we interviewed him at the All-Star game before he made this decision, like,
yeah,
I walked out of that interview with Dave and I said, I think he's going to commit to Mexico. Like it felt like between the way he felt, the way he talked about El Tri, the way he talked about his family, his upbringing, I think that's where he's going to go. We're talking a lot about Ricardo Pepi. We should probably talk about the best forward in this game, which is Raul Jimenez. Back, U.S. hasn't seen him this year. No, he's back in form, as we talked about in extra time. You have Zimmerman, and you have Miles Robinson. And then on the other side, you have Lozano and you have Tecatito running off Lozano's movement, whether he comes back and finds the ball and creates those lanes or off his hold-up play. I mean, this is a huge test, Dave, for the U.S. back line.
Yeah, I think, listen, I love Canada as much as the next person, and I think we'll talk about them in a little bit as well, their lineups out. I still think this is the best front three in the region when they're all healthy. I think Jimenez is the second best player in the region when healthy. We haven't seen that for a while, but the thing that stands out about him is physically he's a true natural center target forward, but his feet are so good and he reads the game so well. And when you add Chucky Lozano, who's basically a finisher striker on one side, and Tecatito, who can beat guys 1v1 or can come inside and create goals for himself, it really unlocks, I think, Jimenez. Now, I would say one of the failings of Tata in his time now has been he has no replacement for Jimenez. Jimenez was out for a year and a half, and he has no plan.
Do not slander Ariel Antuna like that. Don't come into these Twitter spaces streets.
Yikes. I can't believe that name just
come at
if there's a certain
Galaxy legend.
Yeah, if there's a certain Galaxy player who is in the fold here, I think things would be all right as well. Yeah.
I don't agree with that, by the way, either. But you could have tried it. We don't know. Funes Mori hasn't been successful. I don't think Henry Martin's gotten the opportunity that he deserved. I think he's the guy. But either way, Jimenez changes this team completely because you put him in there, and now Chucky can play at his best role, which is out wide, where he can be a second forward if he wants. He can come deeper if he wants, or he can go wide and get isolated and beat guys 1v1. And I think it's going to be a nightmare for DeAndre Yedlin, as we saw in the Nations League final as well, when he has to deal with Lozano. That unlocks him, and Jimenez has been able to do that for this team. What's interesting about the U.S. center backs is you've got two guys who are really comfortable stepping forward and chasing, right? Walker Zimmerman and Miles Robinson are probably two of the most athletic center backs in Major League Soccer. Zimmerman's probably the most athletic player or center back in the U.S. pool. And so they do have the ability to chase him. It's all about now the communication and what we saw with John Anthony Brooks about getting caught out against Honduras, and then the goal gets scored behind him. That understanding of when they're stepping, who's stepping, and then who's dealing with Tecatito and Chucky, or if it's Ache making a late run or something like that into that space. That's where I think a lot of the question marks for the U.S. defense is going to be, and there's no answer in the long run. Like at some times, Raul Jimenez is going to create chances for this team. There's no way to avoid that. He's too good. The question is, can you isolate it enough? Maybe it's Tyler Adams always sitting in front of him rather than focus as much on the central midfield. That's a way to solve that. But I think that's the huge test. And you could say the U.S. had an okay luck against Canada, but it was a different test because the focus is on Davies there. And that's on the wing. So it's in a way you can isolate it to that side, where Jimenez is different because he's playing down the middle.
I got Tude in on for the pregame. Does it look is it pouring there? It looks like it's raining pretty hard.
Wait, but you don't have sources on the ground to get us
we do have a source on the ground, but I don't know where Abner's at. He's in some warm bar somewhere, probably having a nice cocktail.
He's probably in a suite.
Exactly. I saw he was there, and I was like, "Oh, he would. He got himself there." This looks like it's going to be awesome, by the way. Like, this stadium is full right now. Yeah, Anders confirms via text. Thanks, Anders. There is rain. I got that. They got the dude on screen with like a soaked jacket going on.
Yeah, I think that what we've seen in the past, and you and I have been to a USA Mexico, when it was in November, like miserable weather, cold, whatever, is I don't think any of that really affects it. This is going to be, I think, the fastest game we see in World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, I agree.
Like on this surface with these two teams, I think this game's going to pop. And what we've seen when they've lined up now over the last year or so, since the U.S. has gotten their feet under them under Berhalter, is open games with energy. And so I think that's what we're going to see tonight. And you talk about the stadium and the atmosphere and the lights. Like, I think this is going to be, I mean, it should be a huge event. And it's going to be a big moment. And that's what both these national teams are sort of looking for. And that's where the value comes in this game of, like, as Cesar said, like, if either team loses, in reality, they are not in trouble in qualifying for the World Cup. The World Cup is still possible because it's an Ocho. Ooh, Albert Elise just scored to go up 1-0 in Panama. He just monstered through two players.
You know who has the most unmanageable, and this is a Kalen Carr reference for sure, Instagram stories of all time? Albert Elise, man. Anybody who ever mentions Albert Elise in their Instagram story, he is adding that to his. And after Bordeaux plays, if there is a picture of Albert Elise anywhere in the world, he is posting that thing. He's having a great time in France. Glad to see him score too as well.
Yeah, well, he's going to have a lot to post now. But so as I was saying, as Cesar said, I don't think either of these teams are in trouble. But I think they both want this moment. I think for the U.S., you want to re-announce yourself to fans who have questioned you for the last 3 years, understandably. And I think for Mexico, under Tata, you've lost twice to the U.S. this summer.
Yeah.
And you want to say, we are still the best in the region.
Yeah, exactly. It's a moment of redemption for both teams. And you mentioned it there. I think both teams will be fine. They're looking good at this point in World Cup qualifying. But for the U.S., I mean, it's pretty obvious. We saw what Rafa Marquez did to literally move the venue to across state because he scored that header and made it 2-1. Ended 2-0. Congratulations, Rafa Marquez.
That's the last U.S.-Mexico game that Dave and I were at as fans. And let me tell you, those beers did not. The feelings from those wasn't as good afterwards as it was before.
So if Mexico were to win this, I mean, I know that the U.S. has done quite well this year, but that'd be a second time in a row that Mexico gets a road qualifier win.
Do they
over the U.S.?
Do they like annex Ohio at that point?
I don't know if that's the state that they want, to be honest, but yeah, I guess so. But of course, with the U.S., I mean, you guys have talked about it. This would be a third straight win over Mexico in what, 6 months? I've never seen something in that short amount of time to get those 3 wins. It's such an incredibly short amount of time. So obviously for Mexico, there's a huge amount of redemption for them as well. And as I mentioned, like right now, there's an immense amount of pressure from Mexican media saying that despite the fact they're doing well in World Cup qualifying, despite the fact that it wouldn't be that much of a shock if they were get a loss or a draw here, they're saying that this is their moment of redemption. It's their moment for revenge and that they need to be getting the win here against the U.S.
What did we think of Greg's comments about Mexico not respecting the U.S. the way the U.S. respects Mexico? Like that's so like to say that to me, that's so intentional. He would have had to really. That's not something you just like say in the heat of the moment, right? Like that's almost a storyline that you're planting that you've been thinking about.
So here's my take. I think, and I could be wrong, but you hear it from a lot of people. I think that past generations of U.S. men's national team players feel like the current generation doesn't totally understand the battles and struggles that they went through. And one of those was ascending to be able to challenge Mexico in the region. It was from 1990 through to, the draw in 2000, the win in the World Cup in 2002, the Dos Aceros, all of that. And I think that was his moment of like moving the fight on to these players and saying they don't respect you.
Lighting a fire.
Your role as U.S. men's national team players now is to make sure that they respect you and they have to say it. Now, I don't know where the value comes there. That's all the mental sides of coaching, but that's how I took it when he said it.
Do you think do you think he was right, Cesar? That El Tri, that Mexico fans, that Tata, that like the Mexican soccer setup, still looks at the U.S. and is sort of like, eh.
I'm not entirely sure. I think that for the most part, I think people have changed their views. I'm not going to say everybody is saying, oh, the U.S. is a much better side or doing incredibly well. I do think that there's more respect now. And I think you see that with the players that are playing in Europe and when you see the 2 wins recently. But I mean, it's just mind games though, right? Like the comments and I think it can work for both sides. I think for Berhalter, he could put that quote up on a wall before tonight's game and be like, this is what they're saying about you. And for Ochoa, I believe the quote was, Mexico was the mirror in which the U.S. wants to see itself and wants to copy. I think that kind of, I don't know, like eggs them on a little bit. Kind of like, I don't know. I think there are a little bit of mind games going on here for the most part. But I think Mexico can use this as an opportunity to kind of mess with the U.S. a little bit with the way that they want to head into this game. But for the U.S., if I was Berhalter, I'd be like, cool. Do you see what Ochoa said? Like I said, put it up on the wall, and I would use that as inspiration.
And I think they will. And part of what we talked about on our ETR preview is like for these 2 groups now, this rivalry is sort of growing again because you don't have the Borgettis and the Gucci's, you don't have Landon, you don't have you do have Guardado, you don't have Pardo. Like there was so.
Well, Dardo will be there for 10 more years, probably. I guess 10 more years.
Yeah, fair.
They'll be linking him with the Chicago Fire in like 2035, is that what you're saying?
Well, no, dude, he's got to go play for Indy 11, Toronto. You got to follow the legend.
You know, on Football Manager right now, he does not want to renew his contract with Real Betis. That's a little disappointing for me. But sorry, I'm derailing you guys right
now. That Betis
save
is just going to go down the hills with you.
And so I think part of like all of this is you're trying to stoke the flames on these players, like learning each other and learning how to have animosity and have this rivalry with each other because they're new elements. And I think Weston McKennie picked it up pretty quickly this summer. Tyler's up for it. Obviously, the Pulisic celebration in the Nations League final, I think, adds to it. Kellen Acosta seems to be born in it. Everyone else has merely adopted the darkness. He was born in it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's all part of it. And I think that's all coming. I tweeted out today, and it was one of the things I was thinking about this week of just like, I've said for a while that this is not a golden generation. This is the beginning of a pipeline for the U.S. And I think a lot of it is coming through these MLS academies. And, people tell me how good Joe Scally is. I've been watching him play for 4 or 5 years now. Like, I think it's going to continue coming. I don't think either of these nations will ever have a huge gap between them. But I think the soccer the U.S. is going to play is going to continue to progress as the quality of these players progress. And I think there's going to be games coming where the U.S. with the ball plays Mexico off the field. And there will be fans or media members who will have never respected the U.S. who will have no choice to. I don't think that's going to be the moment where Mexico will never catch the U.S. again. I think it's continue to go back and forth. We are not at that moment yet, though. This game is going to be like it was this summer. It's going to be set pieces. It's going to be counterattacks. It's going to be messy at times. Like this U.S. group, as excited as we may be, they are still 22 and 23 years old. And Yunus Musa is not ready to dominate 90 minutes against Mexico in a World Cup qualifier.
Yeah, but I think that's just playing to strengths, right?
Yeah.
Even if you wanted to play that way against this Mexico team with these players, why would you?
It's like,
Go make it fast. Go make it 50-50s. Go make it transition opportunities. Go make it 1v1 foot races in behind. Like that's how I would be going against this team, even if I could sit back and say, okay, well, we could keep the ball on the ground. I actually think that'd be a disservice to the U.S. to play that way, at least against this El Tri team in this matchup right now. We got to talk Canada. Let's get some predictions, guys, before kickoff's coming. Right now I have ESPN FC going in front of me and Turiene, and I'm starting to get real. I'm just like, you get the jitters, the butterflies. I'm getting them. We'll start with you, Cesar. You said draw. I think it was 1-1 on the show. Do you still feel confident about 1-1 with the changes that we've seen from Tata in this 11?
I think so. I'm going to stick with the 1-1 here. Yes, I am worried about Vasquez and Cata Dominguez, but at the same time, Ochoa's in a very good run of form. I do like the idea that he brought in Robo to help alongside Edson defensively. I think that's going to make a huge change here for them. And obviously, with that front line, Chucky, Jimenez, and Tecatito, even if one of them are going to have an off day, and trends will say that Tecatito will probably have an off day here and that it'll be Chucky and Jimenez do most of the work, they'll obviously be a huge threat here going forward. So I'm going to stick with the 1-1. I do expect to be fast. We saw that video yesterday of Edson Alvarez hitting the pitch, saying that it's a little hard. So I think it is going to be a quick game, especially with some some of the rain too. But yeah, I'll stick with 1-1 here.
Dave, what do you got? I have got both teams are scoring in this one. That's my take it to the bank prediction. Like, this is not going to be a shutout for either side, I don't think.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you. My service broke up. Move on to Canada? Is that what you said?
Oh, my God. Now you're learning lessons from Doyle?
Yeah. No, I said 2-1 U.S., I think, this week, and I'm going to stick with that. I think it's tight. I think Mexico is going to create a ton of chances. Listen, I'm still worried about Zach Steffen, and I don't disrespect him as a goalkeeper, but he makes mistakes, and he's not as good a shot stopper as Turner. And if there's anything you see from Mexico in World Cup qualifying, it's that they create opportunities. Whether they finish them or not has been a different conversation, but they create chances. So I'm a little worried about that. But I think what we saw against Costa Rica going down early at home, I think there's a ton of fight in this team. I think there's a ton of belief. And I think in terms of set pieces and athleticism and potentially pressing, although I still don't know where Greg is at with that in this group, which I find frustrating. I think that there's enough for the U.S. to win at home.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be 2-2. That's going to be my prediction. I'm moving it back from the win that I sort of full optimism went with on Wednesday when we recorded. I just think it feels to me like there's a lot of goals in this game and that it's going to be pretty open and there's going to be transition moments for both teams to get out and sort of be in 1v1 opportunities. And for Mexico, those attacking players, they're going to put one. They're going to put one past us. The only guy with more than, I think, 7 World Cup qualifying appearances is Yedlin. Everybody else is under 10. This moment, despite the fact that you had the Nations League final, despite the Gold Cup final, which, by the way, Miles Robinson is the only player from, but we saw a lot more overlap from the Nations League. This moment's still really pretty new for this U.S. team. So I think we're going to go, 2-2 here. On Zach Steffen, to me, this feels like Greg kind of I don't know. I hear a lot of people saying he's going to rotate. This sort of feels like, to me, him saying, this is my guy. I don't know, maybe 2 games, maybe in Jamaica, you see Matt Turner, and this all sort of gets blown up on his head. But if you get played in the biggest games, I still think even if you rotate, that still means you're his guy, that you're his starter, that you're his number one. The one thing I will say, and I agree with you on making, the odd mistake that you're sort of wait, where did that come from? What just happened here? He, to me, and we saw, I think we're going to see some balls in behind. I think if the U.S. do sort of press up a little bit and try to make this a game up the field, that there's going to be opportunities for Tecatito and Lozano to be in behind or through balls to come through or balls over the top. Maybe he's better coming off his line, sort of snuff out those situations early than Matt Turner would be. So I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. Those are our predictions. Other games going on right now. Albert Elise scored for Honduras. So they're up Honduras up 1-0 on Panama as it stands right now. We're waiting for Canada and Costa Rica to kick off. But Dave, we have the 11 for John Herdman. Walk us through it.
So I think a few surprises, you could say, in this Canada 11. So similar to the U.S., they've got a big goalkeeper question, and it's positive as well. They've got 2 keepers that they think are starters. Milan Borjan is the captain of this team. When he plays, Maxime Crépeau, you could argue, is the better informed keeper, and he's a better shot stopper as well and more consistent. But Borjan gets the start in this one. You got Kamal Miller returning at center back, Steven Vittoria as well. And then this is where it gets interesting. It feels like it'll be Sam Adekugbe sort of playing the Alistair Johnston role as either a third center back or a fullback, depending on how these other pieces line up. I think it's Richie left wing back and Tejan at right wing back. Otherwise, it could be Richie at right wing back and Alphonso Davies at left wing back, or it could be a flat 4 where Adekugbe is playing as a fullback. You've got Mark Anthony Kaye and Steven Eustachio in midfield. You've got Jonathan David up top as well. And then I think you have Lamar Miller is the third piece in this. I should probably have this up in front of me. Liam Miller. Yeah.
Yep.
And Liam Miller's the third one. So no Kyle Larin from the start. No Jonathan Osorio from the start, which is a little surprising. And obviously Ugbo, who's the new addition to the group, 23-year-old out of the Chelsea Academy, scoring goals in Belgium right now, who's just announced his commitment to Canada. He's on the bench as well. So we've seen all these players in World Cup qualifying. Miller got the start in Jamaica in the last window. Adekugbe has gotten the start in a few big games, including at the U.S. as well. So it's a strong team for Canada. I think it's rotation. I don't think that there's anything tactically with this group that's much different. And I think you're just looking at a really depleted Costa Rica side at home. And so maybe why risk Laren as he comes back from injury? You can understand with Atiba Hutchinson, if he's a guy you want in next week, then you don't risk him at all. And then there's an opportunity, I think, to get Miller minutes. And he's been good in Belgium over the last few months.
We got a 4-4-2, at least in the lineup graphic from the Ticos. I don't know how that one's going to play out. I went over and checked our good friend CRC Football on this one, and he says he thinks it's going to be a 4-man backline based on the way that the call-ups shook out. But
it's a bad team. There's just no other way. You have Keylor Navas out hurt. You have Matarrita out hurt. I think Gamboa's out hurt as well. You're just looking at a depleted group that is already depleted coming into this. And so Ortiz is a threat up top. Joel Campbell's still one of the best players in the region. I really like Tejada and what he can bring as a connector and creating opportunities out of midfield. But you're looking at an aging back line. You're looking at Francisco Calvo that you're relying on again. You're missing the best player in your nation's history in Keylor Navas. And so this is, you look at what the U.S. did to Costa Rica at home. Like, this is a worse team that's coming now into Edmonton to play outside in front of these fans in this atmosphere. It has to be 3 points for Canada, and it has to be a cleaner start than what it's been.
I'm still shocked that there just doesn't seem to be any trust from Luis Suarez for Randall Leal.
Yeah.
Like, that just surprises me that they cannot find a way to get him into these 11s, but they don't seem to be interested. So that's where it stands. Big night in CONCACAF. You know, the U.S. and Mexico are getting ready to kick off. Tune into that one. We'll have the post-game show. Extra Time Club and Country, driven by Continental Tire on all the MLS channels post-game. So come join us. That one will not be on Twitter Spaces. You know, we do these ahead of every single match. 9:10 p.m. Eastern, ESPN 2, Univision TUDN for U.S.-Mexico. Get Paramount Plus fired up for Canada-Costa Rica. Right now, Honduras and Panama are going as well, and El Salvador and Jamaica kick off roughly the same time as Canada and Costa Rica, 8:05 p.m. Eastern. 9:05 p.m. Eastern on that one. I got these Central Times
can we just
in front of me.
Can we hit this real quick for anyone who hasn't checked? So, like, half of the European dudes are in the Jamaica team. So we weren't sure because of all the rules that have been going on, what's happening. Mikel Antonio not starting. Shamar Nicholson starting up top, but Leon Bailey, this is his first appearance of World Cup qualifying. And then Anthony Grant in at central midfield, who was a huge loss against the U.S. and a huge miss for them. Kamar Roof getting the start as well. So it's like half the group that was unavailable last window seems to be back in for Jamaica. And then we'll see if Mikel Antonio gets an appearance off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, that one's going to be one to watch really closely because that's the next test for the U.S. in this 2-game window.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot to watch tonight in CONCACAF. Just to catch you up before we walk out of here and focus on these games, Mexico currently top of the octagon, 14 points. U.S. on 11 could tie Mexico tonight with a win in Cincinnati. I'm watching the pregame. There is a guy in nothing but American flag underwear whipping his shirt around his head right now. I mean, he's wearing literally nothing else but a headband. This looks like a pretty lively crowd. The beer line's probably long, I'm going to guess, at TQL Stadium. Canada third on 10 points. They could conceivably jump above the U.S. tonight with a win against Costa Rica. That really is a must-win at home for them in Edmonton. That's Alphonso Davies, where he was raised as well, so an interesting one. And also the side of that Canada-Mexico game for their second in this window. Panama in fourth, currently down 1-0 to Honduras, so people are going to be watching that one closely. Costa Rica, Jamaica, 6 and 5 points. El Salvador on 5, Honduras on 3, desperately needing all 3 points. That's where we stand in CONCACAF. Cesar, any last thoughts, man, before we bid adieu and then join back up after this thing's over? What are you thinking on? What are you mulling? What's occupying your timeline?
I'm just glad that you called it the octagon and not the ocho. I just can't take the ocho seriously. I refuse to call it the ocho. So octagon, octagonal, I'm down with that. Those are my thoughts leading into this game.
All right, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Anything? Any final thoughts for us, Dave?
I don't know. You just threw me off too much.
Okay, that's it, man.
I'm entering nerve territory too. I'm gonna start pacing. I'm gonna go grab. I bought some tamales just to have because I knew I'd want them during.
Oh, now I know who you're rooting for. That's great. That's great to hear. All right.
Well, but they're Rojas.
Okay.
So I feel like I kind of evened it out there.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining everybody out there listening to this Twitter Spaces pregame show. We do them ahead of every single World Cup qualifying window in CONCACAF, right when the lineups drop. So join us on Tuesday as well, ahead of that Jamaica game for the U.S. and Mexico game for Canada. That one's going to be later on at night. So we're going to go watch the games. You should do the same. ESPN2, Univision TUDN for U.S. Mexico, Paramount Plus, your home for everything else if you're in the United States. We will see you on the other side. Have a good night, folks. Enjoy the soccer.
Fun.